Welcome to NICTITATING Presents, a series of interviews with dark fiction authors. My name is Sean Thompson, and today I'm going to be interviewing Max D. Stanton. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So back in, I believe, June, your first story collection came out from Trepidatio.
Yeah, a season of loathsome miracles.
That's good you said. I was about to say a series of loathsome miracles, which I know is wrong now.
Season, not series. Although I can see how you how the two could be transfixed.
It's fine. I'm just sort of dumb sometimes. So, all right. So let's get into this. Where to start? Well, I really enjoyed the collection. It's very unique while still being in the realm of weird fiction and horror that I am used to. I would say your work is maybe a little more transgressive than some of the other contemporary weird and horror fiction that's out. Would you say that's fair?
I think that is a pretty fair reading. I do remember get some of the stuff. I get it down on the computer, and at the time it's just like, yeah, just weird fiction. Then I look back at it with a little bit of hindsight, and it's like, wow, I kind of went a little bit nuts with that one, didn't I?
I mean, I think it works though. It really it makes the stories your own. They're definitely wildly entertaining.
Oh, good. I'm really glad that you feel that way.
I do. Some of my favorites in the collection, again, this is just a subjective thing, but I think some of my favorites were Burn the Witch, Following Bebe Astara. I really liked Pigman. Pigman was delightfully twisted.
Pigman is one of my favorite in the collection. One thing that I like about that one and about a number of the stories in it is I feel like I'm able to take some of these sort of classic mythos elements, your ghouls, your Migo, your Necronomicons of Abdul al-Hazred and whatnot, and just have fun with them. Just take these sort of touchstones of horror that we're all sort of used to, and just bring the reader along with them into some sort of like playful new directions.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and I think you do it well. What else was I actually had found out about you first from your story in Vastarian, Patent for an Artificial Uterus, which is just as delightfully odd and disturbing on a second read, I'm happy to report. And you actually, so there's an Easter egg in that you had told me about. Are you willing to say, or do you want to just give a hint?
Oh, well, tell you what, I will, I'm not going to give it away entirely, but I will say that this story was actually inspired by a real patent. A friend of mine sent me a copy of this patent document, and told me and challenged me to write a horror story based around it, and so I did. I took him up on his dare, and there's a hint in the story where if you find it, you can actually find a copy of the patent for yourself.
Wow, that's crazy, especially knowing what the story is about. And let me see here. I quite liked Alchemical Wedding. There's a on the Nocturnal Transmissions podcast, they had read that.
I think they did just a fantastic job with that one. I really loved that production of the story, just the voices, the acting, the sound effects, and everything. I just thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. It's funny because initially when I heard about your collection, I think I heard from John Paget first. He had tweeted about it or something. And then I happened to find this reading of Alchemical Wedding by you, and I thought, oh, okay, this guy's interesting. And it wasn't until maybe a week later that I realized I had already read you in Vastarian with the artificial uterus story. So it's funny sometimes how that stuff works.
That's one of the nice things about the sort of horror and weird fiction community. I think it's both a big enough place that there's always new things and new writers to be finding and discovering, but it's also a small enough place that you're bumping into familiar faces on a regular basis.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I had told you, let's say off air, it's just a term, about how what I think is interesting about your characters is that they're not necessarily unlikable, but they're definitely, some of them it's fair to say are a little bit seedy. You know, you've got a paparazzo, you've got a witch, you've got drug addicts, all sorts of people. I mean, kind of a morally loose art dealer, you know, people of that nature. What do you think draws you to crafting horror or weird stories with those types of characters, at least in the short form?
Well, I think that with fiction, you don't really need likable characters. You need compelling characters, and compelling is not the same thing as likable. You know, I frequently try to write these characters who you know may in some instances be like outright monsters, like the protagonist of Patent for an Artificial Uterus. Like that guy is evil to his core, but
Right.
I still give him enough humanity, I think, and enough and an interesting enough perspective on the world that spending time with the guy is still kind of an interesting experience. So that's really what I'm going for, is not to create these characters that are necessarily morally upright, but who will go through interesting experiences from interesting perspectives, and just sort of be human beings all along the way.
I mean, I appreciate that. I like that. I mean, in some horror or weird stories, you might have a morally upstanding character and they happen to get into a bad situation of some sort of supernatural sort or not. I like that in your stories, a lot of the time it's someone who's kind of questionable morality doing something that they sort of know is questionable, and then something happens as a result. It's a different vibe, you know.
I will also say that I think one thing that was a huge influence on me was the Tales from the Crypt comics and those sort of like EC horror comics.
I
And
could see that.
and a lot of times those featured a sort of like justice horror, where there would be somebody who would do something terrible, like he would kill his wife or something, and then the wife would come back in some horrible form and destroy him, just be like horribly punished for his transgression. So the forces of like supernatural evil are still kind of like doing good in the world, and things wrap up in sort of a queasily moral way. And I think there's definitely a strong element of that to some of my stories, where people go in and do bad things and are punished for that just shockingly harshly.
Yeah, no, I think that might have been the underlying love I have. I'm a big fan of Tales of the Crypt, but since I was born in '84, I'm more into the HBO series.
Oh yeah, that was great too.
It was, but yeah, no. So it's definitely, you can, now that you mention it, you can definitely see that in your stories. Like a lot of them. I mean, particularly the one I'm thinking about. I keep going to the paparazzi guy for some reason, despite the fact that you have literal murderers, or at least attempted murderers, in some of yours. But something about him is just so, I don't know, invasive. So when something happens to him, you're not. I mean, like, he's human enough that you're like, wow, that sucks, but you're not like, you don't exactly feel bad for him.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Again, I wanted for that story a character who would be complicit some way in their own downfall. I think that's just like such an interesting storytelling dynamic, when people's own actions just sort of lead to their self-destruction.
Yeah, I do think that's interesting. I also like that a lot of the stories are very modern. I mean, you have some that are outright set in space, so that's fairly modern, I would say. But particularly things like the Enlightenment junkies, for instance, that could be seen as almost getting into the realm of designer drugs, or following Bebe Estara, that's into celebrity worship and celebrity culture and paparazzi, but things of that nature. Oh, the art dealer too, that's fairly modern. The concept of an art terrorist, and then someone actively seeking that person out to sell that art in the black market. So I guess I just appreciate that. I don't know if that's even a question, but I just wanted to say I appreciated it.
No, I will say that sometimes I'm just going around, and I'm just inspired by things that I see all around me in the news, and on these horrible glowing rectangles. And I think, hey, what would be a fun way that I could use this in like a horror story? How could I make this, an interesting bad guy? So yeah, reality TV. Pigman was largely inspired by Banksy. I thought, well, what if Banksy was an actual terrorist, and just sort of let things go from there.
Yeah, I don't want to give away the ending of that story though, but I quite enjoyed the ending of that story.
The ending of that story hits a lot harder than it used to.
Really?
I think so.
Okay. So let me think. What else to talk about? So I guess, how did you get into writing? If you can pinpoint a reason, why do you think you write what you do, like horror, or weird, or dark fiction, whatever you want to call it?
I think part of it is just because I enjoy that genre very much. A lot of the aesthetics of it I really enjoy. A lot of just the writers who are working in the field. It's just something that I enjoy, and when I enjoy something, I want there to be more of it, and I want to see if I can make any worthwhile contributions. So that's part of it. The other part of it, I think, is just a somewhat inexpensive form of therapy, whereby just sort of writing down, all these various things that, freak me out or horrify me or cause me anxiety, by putting them into the supernatural form and getting them on paper. Somehow that, I think, makes me just makes me feel a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I consider myself a horror writer, but I do that sometimes as well. Actually, I would argue I do that a lot of the time, but
Yeah, just getting those demons out of the head and onto the page.
yeah, I happen to write about demons a lot, so it's very literal. I'll just take something abstract and make it literal. I apologize for the pauses. I don't write these ahead of time, and it's probably like 100 degrees in this goddamn room, so maybe not 100, but
Yikes.
it's definitely going to rain soon. So in your bio, you said you're a D&D nerd. Would you say that's influenced your work? I guess I could see that in terms of you have very creative monster design, and you seem to be very into describing these different types of monsters and having terms and all of this sort of stuff.
My role playing nerddom definitely leaks out into my horror nerddom. I do tend to take on the role of the dungeon master. Because I like setting up the stories. I like describing the monsters and playing them. I think all of that's a blast. Not surprisingly little of my Dungeons and Dragons campaigns made it into this particular collection. The D&D does cross pollinate my writing fairly frequently, but for some reason not much of it showed up here. One exception is that Poyle, the yoga teacher from Hikati Yoga, she was a Dungeons and Dragons character of mine from a few years back. She was a gnomish multi-class cleric / wizard servant of Vecna, and she was a lot of fun to play. I thought I would honor her by making her into a sinister yoga teacher.
Well, there you go. I mean, if you can't do that, what can you do? So how long have you been writing? It's a loaded question. I don't want it to seem like sort of a derogatory thing.
No.
How long have you been writing, I guess, thinking about publication?
So I guess I seriously started back around 2015 or so. That was when I started working on the first story in this collection, Hero of Magdeburg, which was the first thing that I got published. And yeah, that was fun. I thought that I would chase that high for a bit. And so yeah, I just gradually, as I found the time or made it, I just writing more and more, getting it off into various anthologies or magazines or such like. And at one point, I hit the critical mass where I thought, what, it's time for me to try and start shopping an anthology around.
Well, good for you. I mean, there's plenty of people that I think never try to shop their work. They start writing, and then they just, for whatever reason, they don't have it in them. They get maybe 1 or 2 rejections, and they go, not for me. So it's always nice when people are able to keep going. I think that's one of the big drives One of the big things that leads to successful writers is just being willing to keep going.
Oh, absolutely. Just the sheer, endurance and stubbornness you need to get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you working on anything newer, if you can talk about it?
So I've got a novel that I'm going to be shopping around pretty soon. I'd like to keep a little bit mum on that for now, but I will tell you about a couple of short things I've been working on in 2020. One is a story called "The Dying of the Chorus," which is an oral history of the Carcosa Art Collective. And that's a cult story that was recently accepted for the Joe Pulver tribute anthology that's coming out. And recently, my current project is I've been working on a short story about a young man who becomes erotically obsessed with the Mothman.
Okay, that sounds like a fun one.
And calamity ensues. Yeah,
I mean, if you've seen that statue, they give him an enormous butt, that Mothman. So
Mothman got back.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, especially after reading this book, I'm very excited to see what you have lined up. I'd be very excited to read your novel whenever that comes out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. So I think we're getting close to probably the end of the interview. I do this thing. I used to do an interview series called Random Ass Interviews where I would write down sort of what it sounds like, just very random questions and send them to my author friends and see what they would write back. And I decided when I wanted to do this, why not try to do them more or less live, which is a bit intimidating, being perfectly honest, because they're they're kind of about nothing. Sometimes they're about cereal mascots. Sometimes I think I asked Jo Kaplan what her favorite dessert was and what kind of hat it would wear. Yeah, so let me give you a couple of those. You'll have to excuse me if there's a long pause.
No, bring them on.
All right. If there were one character from your book, this isn't that random, but if there was one character from your current collection that you could hang out with from any of the stories, which one would you want to?
Oh, definitely the witch from Burn the Witch.
Okay.
Yeah. She would like again, you don't want to get on her bad side, but as long as you're sort of like polite and respectful and everything, I figure she is a person who knows how to partay.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would assume not Pigman, because that's not fun.
I would absolutely not like to hang out with Pigman. I am not hanging out with Henry Taub. I am not going to the Penance Lake Roadside Wax Museum.
That's fair. I would be sort of questioning you if you were. All right, let me think here. If macaroni and cheese was sentient, what kind of voice do you think it would have?
Probably pretty like low and rumbling, a deep like, hey there, I'm mac and cheese kind of voice.
I mean, oddly, I heard your answer and I was like, oh, absolutely, which is such a dumb response, but it's a good answer. All right.
That's just the way mac and cheese sounds.
So a while back, they were talking about doing another Tales from the Crypt show. If they happen to do that, and by whatever luck you happen to be able to write an episode, what do you think? I mean, considering you're on the spot, what do you think your episode would be about?
Oh, that's a good question.
Take all the time you need. I know it's kind of.
I'd like to do a story about a person being buried alive. I'm not quite sure how how our hero would get there.
Okay, it's a pretty classic one. That could play well. Honestly, that's probably a good one to go out on. I'm running out of things to ask, so.
Live burial is frequently a good place to wrap things up.
It is. It's a good place to end things. So anyway, Max D. Stanton, thank you for coming on. Do you want to do a little short spiel about the book?
Yeah, sure. Season of Loathsome Miracles, out now from Trepidatio Publishing. You can find it at Amazon, Target, journalstone.com, and all other manner purveyor of fine literature. I hope that the folks check it out and enjoy it.
Oh, thank you for coming on again. I'm going to do my end of promo. Just started a small horror press called NICTITATING Books. I also released the first book through that press, Screaming Creatures, which is my first full-length collection. It is available on Amazon if you so choose, and if you like it, please leave an Amazon review or Goodreads review. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to find me online, I'm on Twitter at SpookySeanT. I believe that's it. And yeah, I mean, go by Season of Loathsome Miracles and go by Screaming Creatures. Well, that's gonna bring us to the end of this. So I did this last time, but again, this is the third thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So with that draws this interview to a close.